This is our economic recovery post-COVID-19 digital and data future session, and we're proud to be partnering with the Victorian State Government as part of its Digital Innovation Festival. A few quick housekeeping matters first before we go to the formal acknowledgements. If you're not speaking, please mute your microphone and switch off your camera, preferably. We don't have an official break during this event, but feel free to grab a cup of coffee during proceedings when convenient. It's not a highly formal event. Questions will be handled through the chat function by James and Tyler, so they'll collect questions during sessions, and Tyler or James will read them out for our panellists and speakers to answer. I'd like to particularly acknowledge the following people and organisations. Firstly, the Honourable Jane Garrett, the Parliamentary Secretary for Jobs and Member for Eastern Victoria. Secondly, Catriona Boyd, the Acting Consul General for Great Britain. Thirdly, Councillor Peter Clark, the Deputy Mayor of Nillumbik Shire Council. A number of people from the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions, which is our auspicing department for this event. Andrew Tulloch, Executive Director, Innovation and Industry Development. Kathy Coultis, Director, Strategic Technology Partnerships. And Sorad Motawalla, the Regional Director for the North and West. And I'd really like to acknowledge the role the department has played in helping us put this event together. Of course, the Department of Education and Training, which has supported the establishment of the North and West Melbourne Data Analytics Hub. CEOs of Melbourne Polytechnic and Bendigo Kangan Institute, Francis Coppolillo and Sally Curtin, who are also board members of Northlink. Bronwyn Clark, the CEO of the National Growth Areas Alliance. Our sponsors and partners, Melbourne Innovation Centre, and Empirics, and also La Trobe University, RMIT University, Victoria University, Melbourne Polytechnic and Bendigo Kangan Institute. Northlink members, Melbourne's North Food Group partners. Of course, our keynote speakers, NBN Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer, Mr. Will Irving, who will be our first keynote speaker, and also the Australian Information Industry Association Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Ron Gauci. As well, of course, last but not least, our MC for this morning's event, Empirics Chief Executive Officer, Daryl Ludewyk. We also have a number of industry experts who will be sharing their insights as speakers and panellists, and Daryl will introduce those speakers later. I'm just going to say a few words about the Data Analytics Hub before we begin, and the purpose of this session. As indicated in the promotional material, COVID-19 has been a wrecking ball through the global economy, and we're no exception. It's driven governments and industry to adapt quickly to the digital world, and you may have heard Will and Daryl and I talking about that earlier, and how we've managed. The timelines we had in making change previously are no longer adequate for our lives affected by COVID at the moment. I'm no exception. Often when I was invited to a Zoom conference, I'd phone in, and I've had to learn the technology, Zoom, Teams, WebEx, etc., etc. So that's happened in millions of repeated cases, I think, across the country. These factors have actually crystallised the value of digital and data, which has facilitated new markets, business models, operations and technology. Most organisations do use computer applications to support their businesses. Many haven't realised full utility of data and digital applications and a large part of digital at the moment is data. Data is being described as the new oil, and in business, it provides the evidence required for decision making and planning. And as someone said to us the other day, no data, no decision. COVID-19 has driven many organisations to online business and the integration of front of house and back office systems. This has created a lot of challenges in gathering, use, organisation, and last but not least, protection of the organisation's most valuable asset, its data. To put things in context, Northlink and the role we play, we're an economic development organisation for Melbourne's North. We are the founder and operator of the Northwest Melbourne Data Analytics Hub, which has initially been funded by the Department of Education and Training here in Victoria as part of its Workforce Training Innovation Fund program to help find new ways of upskilling students and workforces. We've undertaken, since our foundation in November 2018, 110 data analytics projects involving approximately 320 students across 5 universities and TAFEs, and we've developed interest from a number of other universities as well who wanted to get involved. The rationale behind the hub is to upskill businesses in data, not only corporates but also that vast SME cohort in Melbourne's North and West. The second rationale for us was the recognition of the need for a skilled workforce and the need for students in the data and IT space to actually have some work experience before they get out into the wider workforce. And one of the issues we found was that there was a real skill shortage in data analytics, but a number of the students coming out into the workforce were very good sitting behind the computer screen manipulating data, but they didn't have the soft skills to apply their expertise in the workforce. So the Data Analytics Hub provides something of a bridging role for a lot of those students. It's worth noting that quite a number of the students are at master's level at university, but we are getting quite a big take-up from TAFE students who are doing business and IT certificates, and they see this as a key component of their learning at TAFE level. And it's encouraging some of them to look at pathwaying to university to go to bachelor's and master's level in data analytics. So it's serving its purpose in that respect. So ultimately the hub is becoming quite an important capability building piece and helping drive economic development. And we're getting businesses saying, well, look, we really understand what we're doing now. We understand our pricing models. A number of businesses, especially manufacturing, were selling products they didn't realise they were making a loss on, and getting a handle on the data has actually enabled them to work that out and take remedial action. And that's just one example. So with the hub, at the moment it's government funded, but we're working on making it self-sustaining beyond 2020, and we're well on the way to doing so. I'll finish my introduction there, but without any further ado, the Member for Eastern Victoria and Parliamentary Secretary for Jobs, the Honourable Jane Garrett, would like to give a short welcome. Thank you, Jane. Before Jane speaks, I might just say a few words about Jane. We've had a good working relationship with Jane and her Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions, and we've had dialogue with Jane across a number of areas. Just as background, Jane was born and raised in the inner northern suburbs of Melbourne. She studied law and arts, was admitted to legal practice in the year 2000, where she specialised in IR and discrimination law. You might remember Jane as the Mayor of Yarra City Council. She was elected in November 2008 and became Mayor in 2010. Jane was elected to the state lower house seat of Brunswick in 2010. She initially served as Shadow Cabinet Secretary, and after winning re-election in 2014 was appointed the Minister for Emergency Services, Consumer Affairs, Gaming and Liquor Regulation, a post she had held until June 2016. Jane was elected to the Upper House in 2018 and was appointed the Parliamentary Secretary for Jobs in the re-elected Andrews government. Thank you, Jane. I'll hand the floor to you to say a few words.
I think the host has stopped my video, it says. Can you hear me?
Yeah, James,
Yeah,
can
we
we
can
restore?
hear you.
Yeah, the host has stopped. Oh, okay, great. Okay,
Good.
I'm there. Thank you. And I really appreciate that, Chris, and for that introduction. And it's wonderful. I certainly worked really closely with you right through my period in Parliament, but also when I was the member for Brunswick, and remain in awe of the work that you do. Can everybody see me? Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. A special shout out to all of the people that have been acknowledged already by Chris. Thank you for being here today. Your presence is very welcome and very important. And of course to my fellow politician in the mix, Councillor Clark, good to see you here too. As a former local government representative, I know just how significant it is to have local government engaged and focused on these really significant issues. I always say it, local government is that level of government which most people in their day-to-day life have an interaction with, and to have our representatives at the local government level engaged not only in roads, rates and rubbish, but in local jobs and in jobs of the future is a great heartwarming thing, and one that is really, really necessary. It's interesting when we think about, Chris, as you were speaking about what this lockdown has meant, you know, just a personal anecdote from this very morning. My youngest is doing book club day, dress up day on the Zoom thing. He came in wide-eyed this morning and said, I'm going to be someone from the olden days, Mum. And I said, who are you thinking? And he said, someone from the 1980s. And I said, well, that's really old. That's really old, little man. And at the same time, my eldest was working out her framework for her philosophy dissertation, which is going to be looking at the ethics of AI in warfare. And I thought, well, haven't we come such a long way in those few short decades? And it wasn't long after the 1980s, of course, that Northlink was established with its purpose to be networking, economic development, making sure there was cross-fertilisation between industry, universities, TAFE, schools, all of those really significant things that make for economic growth, particularly in these times. And I just wanted to touch on a message of hope, I think, coming from the building blocks that people like Chris and those presenting here today have done. Although Victoria's been very hard hit by the virus, we come from a position of strength in terms of the future economy. We have driven out of this state. We're the state of innovation, we're the state of startups, we're the state of new and innovative ecosystems. A huge amount of work has been done by both the government and the private sector before this pandemic hit to lead the way, along with cities like San Francisco and Berlin. Melbourne is right up there in terms of its innovation, and it is forums like this, and it is organisations like Northlink, which have contributed so greatly to putting us in that position. And as you rightly point out, and will be the subject of discussion today, how we now apply and exploit those opportunities for the benefit of our communities and for the jobs of the future when people have been so hit hard, particularly in the north and the west of Melbourne, is going to be the building blocks of how we get out of this. So the Victorian Government is delighted to be supporting both Northlink and this forum and the hub. It is one of the shining examples in this city of what can happen when the business leaders, education leaders and community leaders come together for the common good of creating sustainable and exciting jobs for the future. So I'm really delighted to be here today. I'm sure the forum's going to be outstanding, and of course it's just one step in the many that have already been taken and are yet to come to ensure that Melbourne remains at the forefront of innovation and digital technological innovation in particular in the months and years ahead. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Jane, and I really appreciate those warm words and also your message of optimism for Melbourne and Victoria. Certainly have been the hardest hit in the north and west, but there's a lot of very good community spirit. There is optimism out there. We are doing good things as a community and as a state, and I'm sure we'll be back bigger and better than ever as we come out of COVID.